Greg grew up very much in Western Australia. His political career in New South Wales started in 2005 when he filled a vacancy in our Legislative Council, the Uplands in New South Wales. He's been doing a great job ever since. Greg has tackled many of those issues, even against the wishes of some of his party, on addressing issues that are close to our heart, about the human person, about the dignity of a person's life, the dignity of women, the nonsense that's portrayed as safe schools, and generally speaking, he's living the faith as best one can in a very challenging environment, as we have seen at the federal level as well as state level, a challenging environment that really punishes people unsympathetically if they adhere to the faith. And we all know that that is the issue of our time. That our religious freedoms and what we take to be universal norms and truths are being reworked in an unthinking sort of way. So I would like to welcome Greg to speak to us tonight as someone I think is on track as a nation builder in terms of leading people in the political realm. Thank you, Greg.
Minahan Oration this evening. I'd like to specifically thank Greg, who contacted me directly and invited me to give the address this evening. Thank you, Greg. I have to say, it's been a long time between drinks. Back in March 2014, I received an email from Patrick Tuckerman. Now, I don't know if Patrick's here tonight or may not have been able to make it. Patrick at the time was the chairman of the Knights of the Southern Cross Gunnedah branch in regional New South Wales. And he invited me to speak at the 2014 New South Wales State Conference that was being held in Gunnedah later that year. I happily accepted the invitation, not only because I had some first-hand knowledge of the outstanding work that the Knights of the Southern Cross did over many decades, continues to do, I should say, both within the Catholic Church and the community at large, but he generously gave me the address title, and I quote, this was the title for my address, Speak Out. Now, to be fair, Patrick, Speak Out was the theme of the 2014 State Conference here in New South Wales. However, to give a politician such latitude in terms of what they are asked to speak on was quite a blessing. As we know, while politicians are always listening to their constituents, keen to get feedback, and just can't wait to participate in the next community roundtable, we all know that they often like telling us what they think we we want to hear and or from their own perspective what we should hear. I deliberately use the personal pronoun there because politicians, while typically members of political parties, are individual human beings with all the baggage, both good and bad, that description entails. I will explore this point later in my address this evening. Can I say I enjoyed very much my visit to Gunnedah in September 2014? While I could not take the speech I gave at that state conference, although I tried today, no doubt I did take the opportunity to speak out. I recall the audience was polite and I enjoyed a great lunch over some wonderful conversation that afternoon with participants before I headed back to Sydney. Patrick sent me a kind thank you letter that I still have, and in fact I read today to refresh my memory. On a personal note, I also acknowledge my father, Peter Donnelly. Dad, who entered eternal life back in March 2015, was a long-time member of the Knights of the Southern Cross in Western Australia. We, it's he and his family, we lived in the country town called Mandurah, about an hour's drive south of Perth. And Dad was active in both St Vincent Hall and Knights of the Southern Cross. He demonstrated to me, through the way he lived his life, that for everybody, but perhaps in particular people of faith, words without deeds just not cut it. The title this evening's address is The Role of the Catholic Politician. While this title, in terms of its latitude, is not as broad as Speak Out, nonetheless, it is a generous subject to talk about. As I was preparing some notes for this address, I did ponder this question. What if the title of the address was instead the role of a politician who is Catholic? This led me to wonder, is there a distinction between a Catholic politician and a politician who is Catholic? If so, what is this distinction? Is this distinction real, or are we just playing with words? If there is a distinction, as a politician and a person who freely acknowledges and proclaims to be a Catholic, which I do, what does this all mean? A Catholic politician or a politician who is Catholic? In making this point, I'm not trying to either be trite or clever. I make the point for this reason. My experience is that politicians in this state, and indeed around Australia, do not generally go around describing themselves as Catholic politician, a Jewish politician, a Muslim politician, an atheistic politician, a secular humanist politician, or a legal positivist politician, etc. The experience I have had is that politicians are politicians who are Catholic, or Jewish, or Muslim, or atheist, or secular humanist, or legal positivists, etc. The truth of the matter is that individuals who succeed in entering into elected public office bring with them their whole body, mind and soul. I know it's not presently and may never have or will be fashionable to acknowledge or praise what politicians do and how they go about it. But can I say this? Particularly with respect to politicians who serve in our lower houses, they work exceedingly hard to both get there and remain up there in their seat. As we all keep hearing these days, there are no safe seats. You can be sure that your state MLA and your federal MHR have not somehow just wandered in and found themselves on the green benches. They have worked very hard, often over many years, to get there, and once there, intend to stay there for a lengthy period. What I have said for lower house politicians also applies to people like myself, upper house politicians, although we enter Parliament by a different route, and the work we do is different as we are working in houses of review. Nonetheless, as I've said previously, you get the whole person, body, mind and soul. And each of these people, every last one of them, bring to bear a world view that animates both directly and indirectly their consideration of matters and decisions they make both inside and outside of the legislature. Regarding those world views, they are shaped by a range of influences including personal experience, level of education, family life, mentors, political and economic ideology, philosophy, and yes, religion. This is hardly an exhaustive list of influences that comes to bear on all of us as we progress through life. The point is that when a person is elected into Parliament, the punters, as they are commonly referred to these days, get that whole person, as I have mentioned above. And with respect to the influences, may I say that politicians, being politicians, generally choose carefully when and to whom they disclose those influences, if at all. Before moving on from the issue of influences, can I make a brief comment about political parties? In our democracy, it is political parties, not individuals, that form governments. The parties made up of individuals, of course, but it is the parties or the coalition of parties that secure mandates to govern over us for a time-limited period. Parties secure mandates at elections to govern. Parties take to elections policies seeking endorsement from the electors. Parties that win elections proceed on the basis that they have asked for and received a mandate to implement their policies. Those who wish to represent a political party in Parliament find themselves bound by those parties. Now this should not come as a surprise, for it is the party's policies that usually got them interested and involved in politics in the first place. Each party has its own way of enforcing solidarity on its members around policies. Generally speaking, supporting party policies is not a practical problem for politicians. That is what they expected would be the case when they entered Parliament. On what have been considered contentious social policy issues, parties in Australia have traditionally given their members what are called free or conscience votes, thus releasing them from having to toe a party line on particular issues. The matters, for example, of decriminalising abortion and legalising assisted suicide and euthanasia are recent examples where the major political parties have given their members a conscience vote. I note though, and I do this with some serious concern, that there is a growing influence among some people inside my party, the Australian Labor Party, that voting on matters relating to abortion should be transferred from being treated as a conscience vote to a party vote. Moreover, having observed what happened in the Victorian Parliament in 2017, I am quite sure that there are individuals who also believe the conscience vote on assisted suicide and euthanasia should also be replaced by a party vote. In preparing for this address, I read the book Reach for the Stars, 1990 to 2009, New South Wales Knights of the Southern Cross, Bold Men of Faith, Hope and Charity by Tripp Baxter. I'm sure many of you have read it. The first third of the book goes into significant detail about those critical founding years for the Knights of the Southern Cross in New South Wales. The single-mindedness and determination by both Patrick Minahan and Joseph Lynch to create and breathe life into the organisation, not just in New South Wales but also in other states, was impressive to say the least. The two men, quite different in many ways, worked to create an organisation that celebrates its centenary this year. Indeed, the 1st of September this year marks 100 years to the day that the Constitution of the Knights of the Southern Cross was adopted by its members. While acknowledging the co-founding work by both Patrick Minahan and Joseph Lynch, can I also acknowledge Father Bernard McKerron? If not for the chance meeting on a train towards the end of 1917 between Joseph Lynch and Father McKerron, who knows if the Knights of the Southern Cross would have been established. Regarding Patrick Minahan, there is no doubt that he was an impressive character. For those wanting insights into the man, I refer them to the book I have just mentioned. A proud Catholic, Irishman, husband, father, businessman, advocate for the poor and dispossessed, he was an active Labor Party member and indeed served in the New South Wales Legislative Assembly from 1910 to 1927, representing the then named electors of Belmore and Sydney. Like all politicians, his view was shaped by many influences, including his Catholic faith. I went back and read Patrick Minahan's inaugural speech, which of course is the first speech a politician gives when they're elected to Parliament. What struck me about him was his deep concern for justice and fairness. In that inaugural speech, and I encourage people to read it, provided to Greg who I circulate to those who might be interested, Minahan raised the issue of a school teacher who had been discharged from a criminal matter by the court and was not reinstated by the department overseen by the Minister for Public Instruction. In pleading the case to Parliament in his inaugural speech, Minahan stated, and I quote, this is direct quote, "After this disclosure," and this is his explanation about the matter, "if the government refused to give him justice, all I say is that I alone shall develop the case amongst the people and arouse them to force the government to do justice to an innocent man." Strong words indeed for an inaugural speech, and indeed in any speech from a politician. he advocates for a number of poor families in his electorate. In that speech, he specifically calls out the Chief Secretary, who he says refused to give him blankets for these poor families who were his constituents. These days, we use the fancy phrase, grassroots politician. I doubt the term grassroots politician ever passed Patrick Minahan's lips. However, there can be no doubt that he was. And I would say a very good one at that, given his length of service in the Legislative Assembly. His Catholic faith animated his life both inside and outside of the Parliament. It was his Catholic faith that influenced and guided him when it came to thinking about what would be in the best interests of the constituents that he represented in his electorate and the citizens of New South Wales. No doubt there were other members of the Legislative Assembly at the time who relied on different worldviews to influence and guide their decisions relating to public affairs in New South Wales. Thus is the reality of pluralist democracy, both then and now in 2019. Is politics upstream or downstream from our culture? It is a question that often gets asked. Do politicians and the laws that they make seek to get ahead of where a particular culture resides at a point in time? Or rather, do politicians and the laws they make lag behind what may be described as social norms adopted by a culture? Now, I will try and answer these questions in detail tonight. And I suggest that perhaps they may provide a useful theme for the second PJ Minahan Oration. I will say that I am inclined to believe that politicians and the laws that they make often seem to be following rather than leading public opinion and sentiment. While some like to think that they are, politicians are rarely brave or courageous. Generally speaking, getting too far out in front of the punters is seen by politicians as looking for trouble and not worth the risk. This time last Friday, around 12 hours before the federal election got underway on Saturday, the 18th of May, it would have been unexceptional to suggest that religion and people deeply held religious convictions were not going to play much of a factor in the final result. Surely, when it is all said and done, we in Australia live in a post-religious society. National barometers like the Australian Bureau of Statistics census have shown that the so-called nuns, and that's not nuns as in a Catholic nun, that is spelled N-O-N-E-S, the nuns, those having no religious affiliation, continues to grow from one census to the next. Those practicing their religious faith by going to regular worship, including Catholics, is declining. The recent sexual abuse scandals found to have taken place within a number of faith traditions have surely landed a keen hit on the churches. I could go on, but I think you get the idea. Well, perhaps some have spoken too soon about the fate of religion in Australia. It is far too early to make a detailed and definitive statement about last Sunday's federal election result. However, can I say this week I have read more articles containing the words politics, politicians and religion than I have for a long, long time. I'm not sure that the tectonic plates necessarily moved last Saturday, but something does look like it happened. I thought that the reported comments of the Labor Party's senior frontbencher, Chris Bowen, were particularly interesting. Chris Bowen, the federal member for the electorate of McMahon, which is a federal electorate found in Western Sydney, said, and I quote, "I have noticed, as I have been around during the election campaign, and even in the days since, how often it has been raised with me that people of faith no longer feel that progressive politics cares about them," unquote. All I can say is that as a politician who is Catholic, and indeed a representative of the Labor Party in the New South Wales Legislative Council, it is one thing to, quote, notice the concerns of people of faith, but it is an entirely different thing to have and maintain policies that not only respect but actually protect the religious interests of these people. You cannot go and insert language into your national platform that, if implemented, would strip Australians of key religious rights when it comes to the education of their children. And I think that if you do believe that you can do it and get away with it, are utterly deluded. Last weekend's federal election was obviously not fought over religious liberty and freedom of speech. Far from it. However, political parties or coalitions that wish to earn the right to govern at both a state and federal level in Australia would be most unwise to ignore or play down what is still strong religious beliefs and sentiment among a number of the punters as we head towards the third decade of the 21st century. In terms of being a politician or a would-be politician who is Catholic in Australia today, can I say, as has always been the case, there is much to do. If, as we believe, that all human beings are made in the image of God and are destined to be with Him in eternity, making sure that they and their families can live and thrive with dignity and respect is as relevant now as it ever was in history. Rediscovering the true meaning of the common good as opposed to materialistic and radical individualism that is all around us is, in my view, central to enabling our society to flourish. Politicians like Patrick Minahan was a Catholic and who showed us how this can be done. It is now up to us, and the ball is in our court. Finally, can I conclude by congratulating the Knights of the Southern Cross for reaching their 100th year anniversary. May they continue to flourish and serve the Catholic Church and our great nation. Thank you very much.
I'm just going to ask Brother Frank if you could go to the sacristy. There's a roving mic, and Greg is happy to take a few questions if any of the brothers and sisters would like to ask him. Greg referred to reading Reach for the Stars, which I was going to offer to him as a gift, but now it's ready. But I'm sure I'll give him a copy, but I'll give him a copy of the slide later, because you don't want him filling out unnecessary gift registers and all that sort of stuff. But I'm just waiting for Brother Frank to come to that microphone. If there's anyone with a question, just raise your hand and I'll get Frank to... but if not, all the answers have been provided. Good. I'll get Brother Richard to ask a question in a second. Frank ever comes back. How'd you go, Frank?
The voice may well carry it. Pretty echoey in there.
Yeah, go Richard.
Yeah. You want me to come up?
No, I can take on that.
I've got a way of voice being an old teacher.
Good. Fine voice.
One voice. Nice to meet you.
Rick Donnelly. Pleasure, Lucas.
Richard Lucas from Canberra. Question I'd like to ask you. I've got a strong feeling that there should be more bipartisan between the parties, say on education. Can you hear me all right? No. Oh, I'm sorry, I'll start that again. Is that better?
Throw the voice up where I can hear.
Okay, you can hear me. What I was saying was, I think with the political parties, right, left and centre, whatever they are, certain things should be bipartisan. Education, health, water resources, transport, to name a few. What do you think of that idea?
Well, the question is pretty clear. Why is there not more cooperation inside our parliaments or legislatures between the respective parties to get things done? I guess I could answer it a couple of ways, and I'm not sort of trying to sort of have two bob each way, but on the one hand, political parties, by their very nature, in our bicameral system that we have in Australia, and probably, obviously the ACT is a single chamber, but if we just look at the states at the moment, upper houses and lower houses, that the way our Westminster system operates is that it's winner take all. If you're elected, you're in government, you control the Treasury benches, and you can proceed and implement the policy, as I described in my speech, the policies that you've taken to the electorate and been voted in for. On the other hand, if you lose an election, you're in what's called the opposition, and that's where I'm in the moment. It's been 8 years of opposition, another 40 come, so it'll be 12 years of opposition by the time we get to 2023. But in opposition, you get nothing. Your job as the opposition is to do a couple of things, and this is the way the system operates, to essentially challenge what governments bring before the Parliament and to check them against what they said that they would do in the election campaign. And in addition to that, to try and put into the legislature ideas to improve what the government has brought before the Parliament, or indeed propose even brand new ideas that haven't been discussed before. And particularly with the presentation of the new ideas, that often is done in the lead up to the next election, because that's what's hopefully going to persuade people to change their vote and vote for you, and vote them out and you in, and then you get to take everything and run the treasury benches and all the rest of it. So the system that we have, our bicameral system that we've inherited from the mother parliament, from England, creates this dynamic of contest inside the parliament. And that, at least in theory, is a good thing because it was meant to create debate and discussion and hopefully the best ideas come forward, the best policies ultimately produce the best laws, and I guess ultimately the best outcome for the whole of society is to serve by that process. Now, the truth of the matter is there is a fair bit of carry-on associated with that, and that carry-on is often what we see. And I guess the worst example of it, I'll use it, the term worst example, in fact it's probably the best worst example I can give, is the way the politicians behave around question time. And I'm sure most of you have seen the carry-on in question time either in your own parliaments or the Commonwealth Parliament. Now I have to say, to be perfectly honest, a lot of that is theatre and a bit of letting off of steam and what have you, but I've got to say, I think a lot of people think that the carry-on has probably got to a point now being a bit too much and people should behave a little bit better. But what I want to say is, outside that 1 hour, 45 minutes of what's going on during question time in a parliament, there is a whole lot of work that is done in a very constructive way, where the parties do work in a cooperative fashion to try and bring about the creation of good policy and in particularly laws that will produce the best outcome for society. And I must say that where I am, which is in the upper house, through what is called the committees that operate in the upper house, these committees are made up of members from all political parties, and it's those political parties on these committees do a lot of serious collaborative work to produce outcomes that accord with the point that you're getting at. In other words, serious cross-party collaboration to produce reports with recommendations and proposals to government to do this or do that, to either amend an existing law or pass a new law. So I guess what I'm saying is that there is a deception going on in the sense that most people don't have a lot of time, and I guess I understand that, to sort of ponder over and watch what is going on inside the Parliament. It could be the New South Wales Parliament or the West Australian Parliament, the Commonwealth Parliament, even the ACT Legislative Assembly. But behind a lot of the bluff and bluster and carry on, which is part of the dynamic of the system itself, is in fact a lot of work being done. And that work often is done with people being very sensible, being very intelligent, talking very moderately towards each other and behaving as adults should behave. Now I know that might be hard to believe because of what we often see from our politicians, but that is the truth of the matter. Now that is not to say that we should believe that what we've got is sort of a perfect system, okay? That what we've got really is as good as it can get. I think there is ongoing debate amongst political parties, certainly the mainstream political parties, and for the moment can I sort of generally describe those as the Liberal Party and their coalition party, the National Party, and the Labor Party, so the sort of left of centre major party and the right of centre major parties, to see how Parliament can be reformed to make it more effective and to be more, shall we say, more professional in the way it goes about doing its business and projecting that into the community at large, so the community can hopefully start to rebuild a sense of faith in the political process. I mean, I think we've all heard the arguments that the faith in the political process and in politicians in general is at a reasonably low ebb in Australia right now, and indeed you can hear that argument around the world. I mean, listen, I think that's a debating point. How low that ebb is, I mean, I don't know. You can only sort of make that judgment by looking back over a period of time. But there is no doubt that there is this sense held by a number of people that certainly they are not sure that when they hear a politician say something, that politician means what they say or say what they mean. And one can sort of reel off a series of examples that do that. And it's not a case of also saying what you mean and meaning what you're saying. There is also what you're not saying and deliberately not saying, so you won't get too worried about that. And I have to say, I make a specific example in my own, that speech about my own party, where I think they have sort of entered into areas now of saying certain things and not saying certain things on matters of freedom of religion, freedom of expression, the rights of parents with respect to the educating of their children, and I could go on, which people in the community at large are wondering, where this might all end up. Now, I don't want to overstate that, I don't want to understate that. I think the Labor Party had a series of issues that caused people perhaps not to support it last Saturday. These matters of religion and faith and those points I've touched on seem though to have been part of it. But, certainly as an observer who, I am in the Labor Party, so I see what goes on inside. I see what my colleagues say, I note what they do. I certainly believe the Labor Party really has to do some very sober reflecting on what its attitude is towards not only the respect for the religiosity of Australians, Catholics, and you can go through all the faiths, not just the respect, but the preparedness to make sure that's protected. In other words, religious faith, the practice of religious faith, and the manifestation of the practice of faith, like the social and community organisations that the church are associated with, supporting and running, etc., are protected. And I think as a political party, I think the Labor Party has taken its eye off the ball, and I think that at least in part did cause some grief last Saturday. That's my personal view. Yeah.
I am just going to make me gout.
A statement you often hear being bantered around is that, societies or people get governments that they deserve, as per se. And you spoke earlier on in respect to the politician and being a politician in respect to what your values, your beliefs are, and what you try to bring to Parliament. But where does that end up in line with what society wants or what it thinks it wants? Because sometimes it can or cannot be the right thing. And there's that notion of congruence with respect to, what's good for society or what's good for a nation as a whole?
Well, I guess that's a very, very broad question, but a very important question. I mean, just sort of go through the explanation briefly again, that in terms of the way our parliaments operate, it's very rare for an individual person to run and get into Parliament. Most people get into Parliament through being associated with a political party, whoever that might be. Now, I might say some political parties are quite small and might only have 1 or 2 members in the Parliament, so they almost are personal political parties. But in the main, the parties that govern are large parties, either by themselves or in coalition. And those parties have supported individuals, and individuals have supported those parties to get into Parliament. Now, with respect to, and can I just say, it's all done with our eyes wide open. So people who enter politics do it with their eyes wide open. And the political parties equally support individuals with their eyes wide open. And that's sort of a mutual position. Sometimes when things sort of all fall afoul and things don't work out, there is falling out within parties, but let's sort of put that to a side. Now, a person normally joins a political party because they, in broad terms, support the policies and the values of what that party stands for. And those parties, as I said, take those policies or platforms to elections to try to get elected on the basis of what's in those policy or platforms. Now, those platforms, I might say, try to be reasonably comprehensive, but they can't possibly cover every last thing that may well have to be dealt with inside a parliament. But at the end of the day, you sign up to and get involved with and support a political party that in the broad you feel most comfortable with. Now, it is true to say that if you do join a political party and get elected by that political party, go into Parliament, you're expected to support the policies of that party. And you should know that, because that's the way politics operates. You can't simply say, I want to join your party, get me into Parliament, and then sort of say, well, thank you very much, I'm just going to do my own thing. One way or another, a party will require you to support them. I guess in the most extreme case, if you completely break away, you end up being an independent inside the Parliament. But I mean, that's the exception, not the rule. But you're there and you're expected to support the party policies. Now, in terms of those policies, they need to, if you are to survive in politics, be able to accord with your conscience about what is essentially right and wrong. Now, the issue of right and wrong is hotly debated in society today. And in fact, we hear these days that we are in this very interesting time in history where we have moved beyond right and wrong. There is just different opinions on things. And you'll hear this from time to time. People say, oh, well, listen, right and wrong is just simply a matter of judgment. There is no such thing as objective truth about matters. And all opinions are equally valid, and we just have to live with those diverse, equally true opinions. Well, I don't happen to personally subscribe to that. I don't believe that everything is simply equal in terms of its validity of being right and wrong and true and false. And I have to say my Catholic faith is integral to me having that view of life, that there is in fact truths about matters being right and wrong, good and bad. And in Parliament, I can get on and do what I do quite comfortably on the basis that I don't have that challenge on a day-to-day basis. I'm not dealing with matters that force me to make a judgment about whether this is right or wrong. Because much of what you do is dealing with matters which are prudential judgments, like, for example, let's say a government wants to change a law and increase the taxation rate by a fraction of a percent, for example. In that example, it's a judgment about whether it should be X% or X.5% or Y%. That's not an issue of right and wrong, in my mind. There's a prudential judgment of a policy the government's taken and got elected and whether it's supported or not. But there are matters that do come up which go to matters, for example, like termination of life, euthanasia-assisted suicide, and a range of other matters that do come up from time to time. And they do strike to the very heart of sort of my notion of that there are truths of right and wrong associated with these certain things. So it's a balancing act. I mean, you enter Parliament knowing that you'll be dealing on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis with most things that you can get involved with and dealing with and participating in debates, support your party to either endorse these as policies or to oppose them. But as long as one is given a right of conscience to deal with certain matters, I think that's satisfactory for politicians to find themselves in. Can I say, at the end of the day, the ultimate, shall we say, the ultimate test of whether or not a political party in government has been able to essentially make the right call on judgments about laws that are good for the society at large are tested at the next ballot, okay? So you know, governments get in, they make decisions, they wear those decisions. Those decisions are implemented through laws that are passed legally through the Parliament. They become binding laws of the land. Now, if the government has made an unwise judgment about a particular policy area and seeks to implement something onto the populace at large, and the populace at large push back so strongly at the next election that they lose office, well, that's sort of the consequence of it. But the point of the matter is that it's virtually never ever the case that it's a single issue that exercises people's minds. I mean, you think last Saturday when you went to cast your ballot, I'd be surprised that there was a single issue. I mean, I could be wrong, but I was surprised for many of you there would be a single issue, which was the single issue that drove you into the polling booth to vote one way or the other. Now, as I said, I could be wrong, but the fact of the matter is, for the average person, there's a multitude of considerations, and governments of the day sort of operate on the basis that they get it right most of the time on most of the issues, and that's the way the democratic process works. Gentleman here, then you followed, yeah. This gentleman here was next to you.
Just to comment on what you've just been saying, I think to me last week's election was a pushback by people on the subculture which has been pushing those very issues you've just talked about. And it's another point you've touched on whether you should be leading or following, and it's a subculture like in the ABC. We're cutting edge and we're cutting barriers, and they're horrible, some of those things they're producing.
Yeah, well, as I said, the interesting thing, and my experience is limited, okay? I mean, I'm in the New South Wales Legislative Council, and that's important and significant in its own right, but I mean, I don't bring a national perspective, and obviously things operate slightly different in other states and territories, and of course, if you go globally, the way politics operates in different countries varies from country to country. But you know, politicians hate losing elections because certainly in our Australian bicameral system, as I said, it's winner take all. If you're in government, you know, you're in government, you've got your ministers, you make decisions, you implement your policies, blah, blah, blah. You're doing things, you know, you're writing the checks, you're making people happy, you're governing for the whole. It's pretty tough in opposition. I mean, no one cares, no one cares. You're fighting to get anyone to listen to you when you're in opposition. Your next chance is like March 2023. So the Labor Party in New South Wales is staring down the barrel of March 2023 is the next opportunity to go and present the case why the people of New South Wales should support the Labor Party. So, yeah, politicians really hate to lose in terms of elections. So what that means is that the political parties normally generally are quite considered in what they do. They really don't want to frighten horses too much. But the problem is that, you know, a political party is a living, dynamic creature. It exists, it lives, and people get involved with it. And people can get involved within a political party to try and influence it to take in a particular direction, to support their particular views on certain things. So it's not as if a political party is set in stone in terms of who's involved with it, what values it has, what policies it has, where it wants to go and what it wants to do. It is subject to change. And there is no doubt about it, you know, certainly, I've said this before in my own party, that certainly inside the Labor Party, and I mean, I use Victoria, forgive me for the Victorians in the room, but the Labor Party in Victoria, for example, is a very seriously left-wing organisation, left politically, or progressive. And, you know, they've done so much down there, which only a generation or two, you would never have thought a Labor Party would have done. would not have contemplated, for example, passing euthanasia laws or removing, this is a simple example, removing the teaching of scripture in public schools. Now, we probably don't think about this very much because we're Catholic schools and people are taught in Catholic schools. But in states in Australia, including Victoria up until a year or two ago, scripture is taught in our public schools and has done so for many, many decades. And in fact, is still the case now in New South Wales. Now, it's not just Christian scripture, it's religious scripture from the different faith traditions. But the Victorian government, about 12, 18 months ago, not even longer now, decided to change the Education Act to remove that. Now, why? There were people inside the Labor Party who, have absolutely no sympathy whatsoever with religiosity. In fact, they think religion has a whole range of features which is, sort of almost retarding on sort of society, the ability for society to flourish and develop and all the rest of it. So we really need to sort of push religion out to the margin of things. And we do it wherever we can. So they go looking for opportunities. So they found this provision within the Education Act, so, let's sort of knock it off. Now, we shouldn't be so smug about that either, because I've got to tell you, there are forces in the New South Wales Parliament, in my party, who continually raise at every ALP state conference the removal of SRE from our public schools in New South Wales. You take parties like the Greens, which are on the left of the Labor Party, they're even more vehement in pushing religion out of the public domain. I mean, at the extreme, the hard line of all of this is religion is something only to be expressed in a personal way by an individual. It doesn't have any collective notion to it. And it's pretty much done in the privacy of your home, or in your place of worship, but that's it. That's the manifestation of religion. You can believe it whatever you like, but it's your business and nobody else's, and you're not going to make it anyone else's business. And you can do it at home, or you can do it in your church, or wherever you might worship, but that's really the long and the short of religion. The complete, pushing of religion out to the margins and sort of, if possible, over the edge. And that's a sort of an existential challenge that, is being faced off now in many places in the world, particularly in the sort of advanced West, where there is this whole debate about, religion and its purpose in society. And that's playing out in its own way in Australia today. And the example of knocking SRE out of public schools in Victoria is just sort of like a little snapshot of how that virulent sort of secularism or secular humanism, is held very deeply by some people. I mean, these people, might I add, I sort of don't say that in a derogatory way, these people fervently believe the views that they have as we believe the views that we have. So these people aren't sort of simply looking to pick a fight because they've got nothing else to do. I mean, they really want to change things and go about it in a very deliberative way. And we need very much to be alert to that. And I think, what's happened, and once again, I don't sort of want to overstate or understate this, but I think what happened last Saturday, in some sense, was a wonderful thing. That it's actually brought into, front and centre some serious comment and reflection. I mean, Chris Bowen's a pretty senior bloke in the Labor Party, and him, who lost, I think, nearly 6% of his margin in his electorate in Western Sydney, is saying, publicly, that there is a problem. The Labor Party has a problem with religion. And the respect and the honouring of people's, religion and their preparedness to obviously live their faith, not just, inside their place of worship or inside their home, but to express that publicly as of course we all want to do. Sorry, Father.
My question is fairly similar, because you covered beautifully how the question about whether politicians lead or follow the community. Two organisations that are losing adherents at a greater rate than the churches are trade unions and political parties. There are only 15,000 members of the Liberal Party in Australia. Now, Hillsong's got more than that.
Yes. No.
But the question is, people join the party, they go along, and they keep beating on at the branch meetings about this and this and this, and their same old hobby horses over
Yeah, I think we've done for years.
until they drive the other people out, and then they're the only ones left in the branch. And they're the ones that put the policies to the state conference.
Yeah, you're spot on.
The problem is, it's a diminishing small minority who are wagging the dog here. And I think last Saturday we saw that the dog wasn't going to be wagged, and that churches, unions, and political parties might actually find that the country is leaving them, and they're not getting it.
Listen, it's a very profound question, because it goes to a discussion around some very important institutions in our society.
We were much better when they were all supported.
The point's well made. I mean, it's in living memory, people in this group, that the union movement in Australia, 1 in 2 Australian workers, or thereabouts, were in a trade union. They paid union subscriptions and were a member of a trade union. Now, they may or may not have been active, but they were a member of a trade union. As of today, in the private sector, so put aside government, where normally the membership is generally a bit high anyway, only around 1 in 10, or a bit more than 1 in 10 of workers in the private sector are in a trade union. So 9 out of 10 or 8.5 out of 10 of people are not in a trade union. They're out there sort of working in the workplace, making the ends meet. So that's indeed. I certainly would argue that. And unions, I must say, try as they might, have really struggled to cap that decline. The trajectory has been going down over a period of time, and it has not plateaued. It's sort of, I suppose, it's been hovering around the 12 down to 10 mark for a little while now. So I suppose in that sense it's not continuing to die. But certainly there is no upward trajectory of any significance. So that's a trade union movement. And you can go through other institutions in our society as well. Political parties are an excellent example. I mean, political parties have a lot less members than most people might suspect they have. You've nominated one particular party. The Labor Party probably has a few more members, but the Labor Party, when it produces on a branch-by-branch basis its number of members on the books, you'd probably be surprised to see that they are as low as they actually are. So active involvement in political parties is at quite a historic low in Australia today. And we can sort of go on. So we certainly are in this period of history where, over a relatively short period of time, a lot of the norms, a lot of the organisations, the institutions, the norms that were generated by those institutions, what we've taken for granted, which has always been there, have provided a degree of comfort and safety or normacy that's been around for a long time and is expected to go into the future, is changing. And, that throws up a whole lot of challenges. For politicians, in the midst of all of that, they're trying to work their way through it all and try and work out what is going to be the best. Because at the end of the day, I think, if I look at the major political parties, and once again I'll sort of keep this to the Liberal Party, the National Party and the Labor Party, I mean, these are large political organisations with very long history of either being in government or not being in government, as the case may be at the state and federal level. They know how to campaign, they know how to develop policies, they know how to sell policies, they know how to get government. And thank goodness we have quite clean government in Australia today. We have a very clean political process. No one was questioning the result last week. No one was suggesting it was like an election in, say, some American country or some South American, African or South American country. Clean ballot. The people who are in power, with the odd exception, are clean in the way in which they go about and practice their politics. Yes, there are examples of people doing the wrong thing, and yes, there are people end up before the ICAC and some of my erstwhile members in the Labor Party even gone to jail in New South Wales. But I sort of, as a general proposition, our political parties run clean with the people involved with them, and they do genuinely believe that their policies are going to be policies that the majority of people support, which will lead them into government and then give them the mandate to get on what they're doing. But, you know, certainly I've observed in, I've said this before, my party, there have been influence emerging over the last few years, more than just a few years, who have prosecuted policy developments and policy changes in areas which I think are very niche and very, very focused on particular things, which are quite an anathema to the general mainstream thinking of the ordinary Australian man or woman and family. And I think last weekend is given, and listen, as I said, time will tell whether or not there is a deep reflection on this and a serious, shall we say, sort of rejigging of what the Labor Party needs to do to go about doing its business in terms of what it presents to the voters. It was sort of interesting just hearing some of the alternate comments to the Bowen comment, where some of the people in the Labor Party at very senior levels who hold the sort of niche views about some of these issues that we've talked about are saying, oh, we shouldn't react too quickly to this result on the weekend. I mean, people shouldn't make too much of that, you know. People are talking about religion being an issue. Well, you know, there are a whole range of factors. So there's going to be a very interesting debate inside the Labor Party about whether or not, you know, this is actually a reality check that really needs to be comprehended for what it is, or the Labor Party just continues to prosecute some of these issues in the way that they have, and I think ultimately there's a real potential there to just alienate people further.
Michael, last question.
The gentleman down the back, and then I'll take one in the front. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I stopped working with Labor a few years ago.
Yeah.
When they started breaching, if you like, the moral compass.
Yep.
That informs, you know, that my Catholic faith informs.
Yep.
how I read the policy.
Yep.
And, you know, that was what I play again in the last election when Daniel Precinct, for example, was suggesting that they would tie public hospital funding to the provision of abortion services.
Yep. And use the power of the Commonwealth to force the states to do that in their hospitals. Yeah, it was a...
doesn't need legislative change or a constant vote in Parliament to make happen. And yet, you know, I'm from Western Australia, we have a number of prominent Labor members of our party, and Liberals and others, that, you know, that are prominently Catholic. And I'm just interested in how you balance or influence those sorts of considerations, because, yeah, you know, for me, they've just gone from a time when those, you know, certainly something away when I'm likely to be influential in the scheme of things, but now, we see them happening. And
Oh yes, and you know, you're very true, sir. That's alienated a number of people who traditionally once were Labor voters and have sort of turned their back on Labor and have moved. And you know, I've argued that strongly inside the Labor Party, and many people have as well. But I have to say, at this point in time, sort of that voice is nowhere near a majority voice in the Labor Party. The sort of voice is there, but not in large numbers. So one is sort of arguing the case. And now the issue with abortion is one whereby in the Labor Party, you know, I cannot be made to vote against my conscience. But can I just make this point? And that same person you mentioned was involved in this that at the Labor Party conference last year in Adelaide, the national conference, there was some serious work done by certain people to bring about a change in the platform which would have removed the conscience vote for Labor Party politicians, which would have meant that if the matter of abortion came up for debate in parliaments, that politician would either have to support the party line if they didn't, and that would be in contravention to their conscience. They would cross the floor, vote for the party, sorry, start again, that they would lose their conscience vote, which means that if they crossed the floor, they then did that under the pain of expulsion from the party, because the rules of the Labor Party provide for if you cross the floor and you vote against the party, you're expelled. Now, that was a very live issue last year, a very live issue right up into and during the conference in Adelaide last year in December. People associated with that person you've just mentioned, prosecuting the argument that the right for a conscience vote should be removed. So it's a deep problem. There are people at very senior and high levels inside the Labor Party who are quite hostile to the sort of views that we would share. So, you know, one is left arguing with these people, one's in a minority position, but I sort of take the view that you can't give up and must not give up. You just sort of can't walk away from this. I mean, you can, but at the end of the day, that's not going to preserve what we've got. And indeed, if you walk away from them, you know, all resistance is gone and then they'll end up taking the whole show, if you know what I mean. You've got to continue to resist. And hopefully over time, you know, people of like minds will enter into the parliament and start to sort of challenge some of these things. I mean, as I said in the speech, the next big frontier is euthanasia. There are people in the Labor Party who really believe it shouldn't be a conscience vote. The Labor Party should be able to legislate for euthanasia laws, and Labor Party politicians should fall into line and support that legislation. I mean, they exist in the Labor Party now. So, I mean, that's the next frontier, or another frontier that's, you know, before us, you know, really right now. So, got to stay in. Got to stay in. Was there one more on that? Yeah, okay. Final one, yeah.
The saddest fact for me is you're the first Labor politician I've heard to be able to talk about a politician and a Catholic for the last 30 years.
Oh, well, that's a long time.
So, I congratulate you.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Hopefully it's got another 30 years to do another one. Listen, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one. And there are...
Queensland, Tasmania.
Yeah. There's a few around. Don't want to overstate, don't want to understate. There's always new people coming to Labor Party, young people, and people of other faiths and other religious traditions as well, who, might I say, on some of these key issues, you know, share views. And the other thing is, you know, we have to always be people of hope. We've got to keep working at this, because the other thing is, on these key issues, one works across party lines. So there are people in other parties, like the Liberal Party, the National Party, and the Christian Democratic Party, and dare I say, the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party, and you go on and on and on, where you might be able to find common ground on some of these issues. So, you know, this is part of being a little bit pragmatic, that, you know, when issues come up, you know, you sort of survey the landscape and see what you can work with and what you've got to work with. So it's never just on your own shoulders. I mean, you've always got that capacity to work in coalition with allies. Like in 2017 in New South Wales, we had a debate in the Legislative Council whether or not New South Wales should legalise euthanasia. Now, basically the same as Victoria in 2017. Now, we defeated that bill by one vote. So, one vote. If one person had changed, it would have been all over. There would have been probably euthanasia law in New South Wales. So, you know, one soul, you know, one heartbeat. I mean, if someone had got stuck in the toilet or whatever, we could have been in all sorts of trouble. But, you know, so it can come down to just 1 or 2 people making a difference. And, you know, we should always realise we've got to hold out the hope and work with who we can. And importantly, as I keep saying to younger people, and I encourage you to do the same thing, encourage our young Catholics to get involved, or at least consider getting involved in politics. They can start off at the very soft end, they can join parties, they can and all the parties have their youth wings. They don't have to become hardcore and all rah, rah, rah straight away. Just sort of get a bit of a soft entry into it. And, you know, that's how people then start to flourish and develop an interest in politics. And hopefully some of these people may end up in Parliament one day.
Thank you.
Heard from Greg that the Tuckerman's got him involved in this. I'm going to call on Brother Paul Tuckerman, our New South Wales Treasurer, just to give a vote of thanks.
Oh, beauty.
I know, impromptu, I know.
Thank you, Secretary. The father of Patrick, who was mentioned.
Okay, good. I got the connection now. I got the connection.
He wasn't able to get here tonight.
No, I'll give you my regards.
Still chair of Gunnedah.
Right.
Or is again.
And I've got his letter in my file. You tell him when you get back to see.
Greg, we're honoured to have you here this evening to challenge us, to inspire us, to understand that there are people like you in Parliament who aren't prepared to speak out or to speak up. You know, the terminology we had in Gunnedah. And I think through your address and through your comprehensive response to the question, that you have inspired us to continue to speak out and to speak up. Because that is the only way, I believe, and I think you've indicated that to us, that it is the only way for us to hold the line in matters of faith and morals, which are so dear to our living our life. So thank you for coming to us again.
My pleasure.
In 2019 and for the inaugural Minahan Oration. We are honoured to have you and thank you.
My great pleasure. Thank you.
Well, brothers and sisters, I'm going to let you go.
Yes, I held you back a bit.
I'm sure some of you will go to sleep. Others may enjoy a nice drink with each other for camaraderie. But I'd like to see you all again tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. If you've got anything in the back room, I hope Frank left the keys somewhere because I saw him walk out. So I don't know where he's got to. But brothers, if not, I can get the key back to the room tomorrow. But I'm pretty sure Frank's probably left it in.